folks? Welcome to another episode of Your Next Move. I'm your host, Saint-Gerard with Keller Realtor here in Queens and Long Island, New York. We have a special guest today. I'm going to let our special guests introduce themselves and where they're from.
Hey, everybody. It's James Tiernan. I'm in the Chicago market. I'm actually in Lake County, which is about an hour north of Chicago. And I'm also with Keller Williams. I've been in business for about 12 years after I retired from the Navy. And I work to help people just like you buy and sell homes throughout the Chicagoland market.
All right, so Chicago, tell us basically, I'm going to go straight to the food before we go to anything else. We're supposed to talk about real estate, but let's talk about the food. We have a little rivalry when it comes to the pizza here in New York and Chicago. So tell us about your pizza.
Well, so there's two kinds of pizza. You've got what's called thin crust, which is really fine thin crust and regular pizza, but they don't cut it like a pie. They cut it like a tic-tac-toe board. And I'll just tell you up front, I hate that. Okay, I want pie. If I'm going to get a pizza, I want a pizza pie. I want a wedge, right? I'm old school. I'm from Boston, so very similar to the New York style. Of course, Boston pizza is a little bit better than New York pizza, right? Well, hey, that's what I'm born and raised on. It's a Red Sox rule. And
I'm a Yankee
so,
fan, so that hurts. That hurts my soul.
well, of course it does. Yeah. But the fun part is neither one of the teams are going to the playoffs this year, which for the first time forever, right?
That's fun and sad at the same time.
Yep. But the Cubs are going fine. The Cubs are going to make the playoffs, so go Cubs.
All right. Well, you kind of pizza to baseball. Let's go into it.
Yeah. Well, going back to pizza, the second kind is the deep dish pizza, which this is really a pie. Now, they cut this one like in wedges like they're supposed to, but it's like really thick. They put all the crust in. They put it into a pan. It's called deep dish or pan pizza. They built the crust up. It's like it's not like cornmeal. And then they put the sausage in first, right? And then they put the sauce on top. So the sausage, whatever they're not really toppings on a deep dish. They're like in the middle. Okay. And then the cheese, and then the sauce goes on top, which is completely backwards in a lot of places. So it's an acquired taste. And of course, the sauce is not just, a thin layer sauce. It's nice, chunky with a lot of tomatoes, like whole pieces of tomato. It's an experience. You do have to eat it with a knife and fork because it doesn't flop, like New York style pizza.
That's what I wanted. That's what I was waiting for. I was waiting with bated breath and like, is he going to bring up the knife and fork?
Well, you have to eat with a knife and fork. There's no way around it. You can't pick that thing up. I mean, it weighs a pound.
You have to exercise to eat.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing too is you and I both know that when you make pizza, you make it a certain way, right? When they make this deep dish pizza, because it takes so long to cook, they don't cook the sausage. It goes into the pizza raw.
Okay.
So it's really kind of weird. And, it's good to have once in a while, but it's not something you're going to eat every day.
Okay, speaking of every day, I was going to segue into the sports, but what would be something in Chicago that people would eat every day?
Well, around here, they make a French dip but they call it Italian beef. And instead of like where you get the French dip is, the bread and the roll and the beef, they don't, have a little cup of sauce. Mm-hmm. They just take the whole sandwich and put it into the sauce. Okay. And then you get this soggy mess, which is really good. And, you can try to eat it with your hands, but I try to eat it with knife and fork just because it's just a soggy mess. I'm like, who thought of this idea? And there's different variations with it. A lot of people like the spicy stuff with the pepperoncinos, and it comes in with a sweet pepper, and you get a nice layer of mozzarella on top. And then there's this thing called the Chicago dog, right? So this thing is absolutely insane. I don't understand it. I'm not from here. I'm from Boston, as I said. So I don't understand this thing. But you get this hot dog, a regular Vienna beef hot dog. It's not quite as good as a ballpark Frank, right? but you get this hot dog, and then it's on a poppy seed bun. It's like, why are we having poppy seeds? Just give me a regular bun. And then they stuff tomatoes in it, a dill pickle slice, some tomato mustard, some neon green relish, and then throw some celery salt in there. I'm like, what is this? It's a hot dog, not a salad, right? But
I'm
that's a
just so
Chicago thing.
confused with everything you just mentioned together. I'm like, okay,
Yeah, and then in Chicago, it's taboo to use uh, ketchup on your hot dog.
really?
Yes, that's a very much Chicago thing.
So no ketchup.
No, mustard. You have to have mustard.
Mustard, yes. Ketchup, no.
Right. If
All
that
right.
makes any sense whatsoever.
No, it does not. But I digress. All right.
I
So
mean,
you
who
got
eats hot dogs, right? So it's kids that eat hot dogs, and kids love ketchup. They don't love mustard.
exactly, and you eat ketchup and hot dogs basically at a ballpark. Speaking of ballparks, we kind of you mentioned the Cubs and whatnot. For people who are sports lovers, if they're thinking of moving from wherever they're coming from and they're coming to your area, besides the Cubs, what other sports teams are there?
Chicago is a rich town with a lot of really good sports teams. You've got, and then there's a couple other sports teams, right? There's some really good ones like the Cubs, and you've got the Blackhawks, and then you've got the Bulls, and they were good for a while. I mean, Michael Jordan, established himself here, and they have 6 championships, all with Michael Jordan. Um, but then there's other teams like the Bears. The last time they won was 1985. And then you've got the White Sox, which, if you're in Chicago, you can only like one team. You can like the Cubs or you can like the White Sox, but you cannot like both.
You can't, okay.
So it's kind of one of those things. Chicago's the North Side team, so everybody in the North Side and everybody in the South Side, pulls for the White Sox. So those are the types of things that happen. And then you have, like I said, the Chicago Bears, Chicago Stadium, Soldier Field, right downtown on the waterfront. For now, there's a lot of talk about them moving to other places. And then you've got, we said the Chicago Bulls, but you've got these other teams that are starting to emerge. You've got the Sky Women NBA, WNBA. You've got soccer, the Chicago Fire, right? I believe that there's a women's soccer team that's emerging as well.
Okay.
And and then that's Chicago as a whole. And then we have what we like to call the Wrigley Field North, which is Milwaukee Brewers, right? So whenever the Cubs play the Brewers, everybody from Chicago goes up and fills their stadium. And then, of course, they charge double for parking. Milwaukee is about an hour from where I am, and I'm at about an hour from the city of Milwaukee and Chicago. So I'm right between. So it's
Okay.
convenient to go to both.
All right. So if you're a sports lover, there's a lot for you
There's a
to.
lot. There's a lot you can do a lot of different things. And then you've got, if you really like basketball, there's a lot of basketball options too. You've got, all the college towns. You have DePaul,
Okay.
Northwestern, right? Illinois. There's all kinds of Illinois schools. Illinois State. There's a lot of different venues for that, for both basketball and football, is all the collegiate sports, but basketball and football are really the most popular ones around.
Okay.
And so Northwestern's big part in campus down in Evanston. You've got DePaul right downtown. University of Illinois. There's a lot of different things that people can get into. If that's, if they have kids going to college, or if you follow college sports.
Well, speaking of kids going to college, for the people who are brand new into buying a home, they're moving out there for doing the next career or starting a new family. Parents are following the kids because the grandkids are on the way as well. What schools, what jobs, what's there for them?
Well, there's in Lake County, we have a large community campus, College of Lake County. There's another nursing school, Rosalind Franklin. Most of the campuses are down towards the city. Like I said, Evanston's a little bit further south, and DePaul, Loyola. A lot of great schools that are city based. In the suburbs, a lot of the teachers move out this way, professors. We have great transit system to get there. And those are the things that draw people here. And the industry that's here, there's a lot of major companies. We have got several pharmaceutical companies, Abbott, Baxter, AbbVie, which spun off from Abbott, Takeda. So there's a lot of opportunities for employment here. And then, of course, we have several hospitals, just like any community has a lot of hospitals. Rush Medical Center downtown, Lower East Children's Hospital, as well as several others that are in the area that can really draw people in and make a big impact, especially for anybody interested in the medical community, going to college, that type of stuff.
All right, you mentioned also, thank you for that information. You mentioned also that basically you're a former Navy. You were in the Navy?
Yeah, yeah, I'm retired
Uh,
Navy, so I'd be remiss if I didn't tell everybody that Great Lakes is the quarterdeck of the Navy. So we train every sailor that comes into the Navy. The boot camp is here. We train every single one of them, and every right now every graduation is held on Friday. So
okay.
once a week, you have anywhere from 300 to 1,000 sailors being made every week, and then all their parents come here to visit. So see them all graduate, which means on a Friday night you can't go out to dinner.
So avoid Fridays is what you're saying.
Well, avoid the common areas on Fridays. On Friday night you want to go to like your favorite off the beaten path restaurant.
Speaking of off the beat restaurants, who better to us than you? All right, so where can people go if they're going on a Friday and they want to get something to eat, bite to eat?
Yeah, so there's a couple of great steakhouses that are around here. You've got my favorite is the one in Gurnee, Backyard Steak Pit. Gurnee is one of the major areas around here. They have a pretty big mall, and then they also have a Six Flags, which makes it an attraction for a lot of people. And it's about 10 minutes from the naval base.
Okay.
So you've got a lot of activity around that. That's a common area. And again, it's a little bit further away from the common area, but Backyard Steak Pit in Gurnee. Stevens in Gurnee is also another great steakhouse. Um, and then there's a couple places we like. We in our area we call it Lake County, so we have a lot of lakes here, which and brings a lot of boaters. So lakes, boaters. We're just ending the boating season, having just get past Labor Day, and so it's a recreation area. In the old days, it used to be the recreation area for people from the city to come and get away. Now we go further north, about an hour north into Milwaukee. But there's places where Al Capone used to hang out. The rumor has it that when Al Capone came up here, all the other people from the city came up here, and they were all friends and chummy up here because they weren't in the city and they weren't all fighting with each other. But up here, they're all buddies.
Okay. All right.
So
You mentioned activities. Thank you for that tidbit. For the activities, there's boating. What else for outdoor lovers?
yeah, we have a ton of outdoor parks. So hiking, jogging, a lot of nature type stuff. So if someone wants to go out and do all hiking, biking sort of thing, there's some areas where there's equestrian. So those types of things. In fact, a couple of years ago when Chicago was trying to get to host the Olympics, the area for all the equestrian events would be in my area, a place called Wadsworth. So not far from here, it's about an hour north of the city, and be one of the things that we would be able to host the Olympics on. So that's sometime in the future when Chicago wants to host the Olympics. That'll probably be where all those equestrian events will be held.
Okay. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't ask who are the most famous. You mentioned Al Capone. Who are the most famous Chicagoans? I'm not sure if that's the actual term. People from Chicago, basically.
Gosh. So famous Chicagoans. Well, obviously you've got Michael Jordan and right now Justin Fields. Is not from Chicago, but he's an icon in Chicago as a quarterback of the Bears. You've got a lot of Cubs players. Those guys are always big. Ernie Banks, who passed away several years ago. and all the stuff around that. Harry Carey, one of their famous announcers, is another Chicago icon. For current day people you wouldn't know about, you may not think about, John Cusack and his sister
Oh,
Joan Cusack, they actually
okay.
live around the city. Vince Vaughn is spotted around the city from time to time. I know he owns something around here. Mr. T lived in Lake Forest.
Okay.
Some great stories about him. Um, and then try to think of some other ones. The guy from, I think he's from, Breaking Bad. I think he's the guy from Breaking Bad. Um,
The lead actor.
yeah,
I can't. Oh my God, I'm forgetting his name.
yeah. Well, he's from Chicago. Um, and then the guy from the spinoff, What Better Call Saul,
Okay.
Bob Oldendorf, right?
Yes.
Oldenkirk. Yeah, he's from Chicago. So these people come, and the reason I know this is kind of cheesy, but a lot of celebrities come and sing the seventh inning stretch at Wrigley,
Hmm.
and so they always say Chicago native, and that's kind of how I tie it together. Because a lot of
The
times people are from here, but they don't stay here. They all go to Hollywood, and that's all we know them.
Okay. Brian Cranston was the other gentleman's name.
Yep, Bryan Cranston. Okay, yep.
I had to look that up on Google. But anyway, I cheat.
Thank you, Doctor
But
Google.
that's Dr. Google. All right, but that's interesting to know. All right, so people want to know if they sell a property and they're coming out there, the specific areas that you work in, what's out there for them? Are the condos, co-ops, 1 to 4 family homes? Well, what are the options?
So I work in Lake County predominantly. Obviously I can do city work, so there's a wide variety. So it really depends on what they're looking for. In the city you've got Chicago Public Schools, which may not be the best school system compared to other places. A lot of people are drawn into some of the suburban schools because of their reputation and their ratings. So sometimes we see a lot of migration from the city into suburbs as kids grow to a certain age, right? They
Hmm.
want to focus on that high school education. So in the suburbs, you're going to get a little bit more land. Sometimes you can, depending on how far you go, you can get more home for the buck. I've seen prices go up over the last few years. I think like everybody has. You can, for a typical 3 or 4 bedroom home, you're anywhere from 250 to 500, right? So it just depends on the neighborhood. It depends on the area. Obviously, it depends on the size. The bigger the home, obviously the bigger the buck. The
Hmm.
one thing that's really interesting that people need to be aware of if they're thinking about moving here is that the taxes are relatively high. Now, I'm not sure what you would expect to pay for a typical, 3 or 4 bedroom home in certain areas. But let's just say we had a 2,500, 2,400 square foot home.
Hmm.
My home is a 4 bedroom, 2,500 square foot home on a quarter acre lot. Nothing really special about it, but we've got a tax bill of about $10,000 a year.
Okay, well, in some parts of Long Island, that's considered low. It's kind
Well,
of
I mean,
average also. But
yeah, and
you have more land than some people might have for the
yep,
taxes. But in Queens and Brooklyn, depending on what part of Queens, what part of Brooklyn, taxes are fairly a little lower, but you're getting less land also.
sure. And now the interesting thing, I'm sure one thing that you don't experience is in some of our areas we do have a little bit of ruralness in our area. So a lot of places in those rural areas are on well and septic. So
Okay.
you drill your own well, you get it from the water from the grade from the ground, and then septic system. You have septic tanks to hold all your household sewage, which is something most city dwellers don't know anything about.
You know,
Uh, I had to learn quite a bit being a city kid from Boston. You know,
I can imagine. So how long did it take you to adapt?
well, that's the interesting thing is the adaptation. For me, I'm always very adaptable because I've lived in several different places through my Navy career,
Mm,
and I lived here before we came back, so I was familiar with it. But you just, like anything else, you ask questions, you find the right resources, you learn about it, um, and then I just become an educator and help everybody who's going to go into those situations to make sure they know what they're doing and if these things are right for them.
This is a perfect segue for anybody who's looking for a resource. Hint, hint, right here. How can they reach you if they're thinking about buying, selling, or maybe renting first and then doing whatever the next move is?
Yeah, renting is a good option in most places. Renting here is very challenging because the rental market is worse than the buying market. The best way to connect with me is my phone number, 847-970-2757. James Tiernan. You can also find me on Facebook, or you can email me at ttg.jameст@gmail.com.
The TTG. What does that stand for?
So TTG is my team, the Tiernan Group,
Okay.
right? So we abbreviated that out, and that's a way to use Gmail and still have some level of branding in there without having a name that's like 6 miles long.
Yes, my last name is Saint-Gerard, so putting that on anything basically like can be a problem, and people don't
Yep,
remember it. So I
we
usually
got to
just
make
use my
it
first
unique
name.
and make it memorable without making it too hard.
Yes, the name of the game is making it easy for people to remember. You have to be memorable. Let's just leave it at that. It has to be memorable.
Yep.
All right, so we talked about quite a few things. We talked about activities, we talked about school, we talked about infrastructure, kind of. Um, are you seeing a lot of people using like the riverside? Are they using the boating area more than they used to, or they kind of weighing down a little?
So recreation is very prominent here in Lake County. So you've always got the people on the weekends taking the boat out. Um, even though we've just passed Labor Day, people are still going to have their boats out probably for the next month, depending on the weather.
Hmm.
But at some point, they're going to take them in just because it's time to move on, and they're going to start tuning up their snowmobiles.
Speaking of which, I was going to ask you, perfect timing, Chicago winters. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, no, they're not that great. Now, look, I talk about this with a grain of salt because I'm a skier. I love to ski.
Hmm.
And in case you didn't know, Illinois is flatland. So there's no place to ski here. It's like skier's hell. So you could have all the snow that you want, but nowhere to go on it unless you're going to do some cross country stuff,
I was going to
which,
ask you, what about ice skating? Can you do that at
yeah.
least?
Oh, yeah, there's ice skating. I mean, there's a ton of ice skating here. I mean, there's a couple of outdoor rinks in the city. It's not that popular, in general. Like, they don't
Hmm.
just have skating rinks. I mean, there's a couple, but that's all basically geared towards hockey, right?
Okay.
So that's for hockey playing. And they have year-round rinks, but again, they don't have
Okay.
like recreation skate. It's just hockey because that's how they
Well,
make money.
at the time of this recording, you never know. Maybe there might be a ski lodge coming up at some point in the future, in the near future. We don't know.
Yeah, no, there's flatland here. There's no ski lodge.
They might make an artificial one. Since they can make artificial anything, I'm pretty sure they can do that at some point.
Look, you know, they have a
I try
ski
to be
slope.
hopeful here. I'm
They
trying to be
have a
hopeful
ski
here.
slope in the desert in Dubai, but I don't see them putting one here. This is a flatland, man. I mean,
Uh,
there's a ski hill called Wilmot Mountain. It's about a half hour away. Vail bought it, but it's a valley. The one time, I mean, it's not a ski hill; it's a valley. I mean, maybe it's a hill, but it's you know, I went skiing one time several years ago when I was here a long time ago,
mhm.
and the line to get on the lift was longer than the ride itself. I'm like, are you kidding me? I, I had to wait 10 minutes in line and the lift is only 5 minutes? Like, come on. So I took my skis off and walked home.
All right. I'm trying not to laugh too hard right now. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that people should know about, like the best kept secret about your area? Hey, you know what? This is definitely a place you need to look at if you're considering your next move. You don't know where to go to yet.
Yeah. So the nice thing about Chicago, there's a lot of culture. It's a hub for a lot of different things. It's in the middle of the country. It's easy to get places. We've got three easy access airports. You've got O'Hare, you've got Midway to the south, and you can go to Milwaukee and General Mitchell Airport up in Milwaukee. Easy to get to. People are really friendly. It's the opposite of Chicago. But you can get anywhere from here. And when I fly, because I'm in Chicago, I can get a direct flight just about anywhere. I don't have to stop anywhere. It makes life and traveling a lot easier. It's a direct spot. So if you're thinking about moving here and you still have to travel, this is a great place to launch off into other places. And hey, this is a good place for a second home if you don't like being in the hot weather in the summer, because it's not that bad in the summer. And then you can go back down to Florida or Arizona for the winter, right?
I'm glad you
That's where
brought
the
that up.
smart money is.
Yeah. All right. The other thing I forgot to mention, music. People might want to, partake in some nightlife activity. What can Chicago offer?
So Chicago has a ton of nightlife. There's all kinds of things. There's a House of Blues. Um, there's constantly concerts. There's a concert venue. Um, on the other side, it's in Tinley Park, on the other side of Chicago. They've got one in downtown Chicago called Weatherly Island. So, and of course, we have the ability to have concerts at the United Center where the Bulls and the Blackhawks play, as well as Soldier Field and Wrigley Field. Right, the only place they
Okay.
don't have concerts where they should is at where the White Sox play. It's U.S. Cellular or Guaranteed Rate Field. So there's a lot of venues for music. Music, everybody comes through Chicago to play, and even there's even a local venue here that plays some of the medium-sized acts. It's called Genesee Theater. It's right in Waukegan. Super easy to get to. Very and there's a lot of great connectivity with people. So I mean, they've had the Beach Boys came this year. The Steve Miller Band came, and there's several country acts that go through there as well. So and again, you can double down, and a lot of venues, a lot of people go through Milwaukee as well, where the Milwaukee Bucks play, Pfizer Center. They host concerts there as well. So there's a lot of opportunity to see a lot of different things.
All right. If you can narrow down like, your top three or maybe four sightseeing things if you're coming to Chicago, your experience, what are the top four basically you would recommend people definitely take
Okay,
a look at
well,
or
everybody
experience?
knows about the Bean in Chicago. That's
Yes.
actually doing some renovations around that, so that might be more difficult to get to in the next, 3 or 4 months. Um, but that's a big thing to have a park there. You've got the traditional museum, the art museum, which was obviously was featured in most famous movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Um, I really like going downtown to the architectural tour. You get a riverboat tour, and they talk about all the buildings and architecture along the river. And then they take you out to Lake Michigan. You bob around out there for a little bit, go through a lock. They talk about the history of that. So that's a really fun tour. I did that with some friends. And of course, if you get a chance and you're here in the right season, you can go to Wrigley Field. History, a lot of history there. Ballpark's over 100 years old. That's a great feeling, a great environment. And we've got a couple of tall buildings as well. You can go see those. There's two different ones, and they have two different sets of things to look at. One, the Willis Tower, formerly known as the Sears Tower, which everybody in Chicago will call it the Sears Tower. Um,
Okay.
right, and then you have the John Hancock. So one of them has an observatory that leans out, so you're sitting like this, and they lean
Mhm.
you out like 30 degrees. Um,
Okay.
hey, you're in the window, you're fine, right? And then the other
Sure.
one, if you don't like this part, you're not gonna like this one. This one, the other one, and I couldn't tell you which one is which. They have a bubble where you walk out into glass, and you are like literally above. You're outside the building. You're in this bubble. It's probably like a 6x8 bubble. You walk out there, and you are completely. There's nothing holding you up but the glass.
Okay.
So
I'm probably
at this
gonna.
point you'd rather go like this, right?
You know what? I'm debating pick my poison. You know that I'm coming out in your area basically next week, so I'm like, I might leave that as a question for my audience. Which one should I try? I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I
pray
mean,
basically for the one that's leaning this way, not the bubble, but. I'm pretty sure they're gonna maybe go on the bubble.
Yeah,
Um,
it's pretty interesting. I haven't been to that one. I've been to the Tilt Out, and that was a lot of fun.
all right, I'm gonna try one of them before the end of the trip out there. All right, James, thank you so much for your time. Again, to the audience, if you have any questions about anything that we discussed, you think about buying, you think about investing, whatever you're looking to do, you're trying to figure out what your next move is. I'm Evans. I'm here in New York. If you're looking to sell and you're looking to go elsewhere and you haven't decided yet where you want to go, and Chicago sounds like the perfect place for you and your family, definitely reach out to me. Definitely reach out to James. That's what we're here. We're here to help you out. And if you have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out to us. That's what we're here for. James, you have the last words. What do you want to tell to the audience? I know they're hearing negative stuff in the news always. So, what can you tell them to give them words of encouragement for their next move?
Whatever you hear in the news, just remember that happens everywhere. And there's a ton of opportunity here in the Chicago market. I've got investors buying on the south side because, you buy low and you sell high, right? So there's opportunity in the south side. And then in the suburbs, it's nice and peaceful. And if you want something nice and peaceful that's maybe a better economic fit than where you are, then let's talk.
With that being said, thank you for watching.